surrounding a home inspection, covering Yadkinville all the way through Mebane, basically anywhere that's about an hour from Greensboro or Winston-Salem, we're going to cover. That's kind of our area and our territory. Been doing this for 6 years. Got a team of 3 other inspectors that work with us, and a bunch of different subcontractors. So we're more than just one person, which can help, especially if you guys are bringing cash deals to the table, can help bring some speed there as well. And really, like you were saying before, I got asked to do this, I don't know, about 2 hours ago. So,
if that.
So I don't have any fancy PowerPoints or anything like that. But I definitely want this to be an interactive thing. So I put together some lists on things that can help you from being a new investor to a more experienced investor, to different things that we see with multifamily, a little bit into commercial property managements, and a lot on how to use partnerships, and just different things to think about as we go through. So, feel free to type in the chat bar. Tyler's going to manage that for me and let me know if anything pops up. I feel like I need to explain this ahead of time. We're all in this to make money, right? So you guys want to make money doing this. We don't, it might be fun to do this, but it's also not, primarily used as a hobby to break even or be a charity, right? So, there is going to be some things that we talk about from an investment standpoint. Paying people well, we come as an expense, obviously, inspectors in general, not just home team. So, we want to provide ROI, inspectors want to provide ROI, and you got to think about, some of that ROI and some of where you want to put cost in the business versus unnecessary cost, right? Like none of us want unnecessary costs. So as we talk about that, I feel like that's just something that make sure that we're all on the same page there. I want you guys to make money as you guys are investing, right? So really just kind of starting off on what a home inspection is, in case you guys aren't familiar. I'm sure most people at least have a general idea of what we do. But essentially we're a visual snapshot of the home. So we cover the major systems in the house: roof, attic, interiors, electrics, foundation, kitchen appliances, water heater, HVAC, but all from a visual perspective. So what that means is if we can't see it, or we have to pull things back, or we need x-ray vision to see it or predict the future, those are things that we don't do. It also means that we're not technically exhaustive. So HVAC is a good example. May not be cooling properly. We're not going to tell you why it's not cooling properly, just the fact that it isn't cooling properly. We might have ideas about how that happens. And if you're not cooling properly, it's more than likely low refrigerant, which could be caused by 3 or 4 other issues. That gets into an expertise range. So we tell people to think about us like a general practitioner. Your family care doctor. You come into your family care doctor with a knee issue, they're going to say, cool, you got a knee issue. It could be caused by one of these 3 or 4 things. And here's who I recommend you seeing to get that further evaluated and know what the exact issue is, right? So we can tell you whether you need to get a handyman or a contractor or a structural engineer to really look at the issue. So that's a little bit about home inspections. I always tell people it literally is at the time of the inspection. We've done inspections 2 weeks apart on the exact same house, and weather conditions change and it makes the property different, right? So, all it takes is one torrential downpour and you've got 3 inches of water in a crawl space or a basement that wasn't there the last time that we were out, 2 weeks prior to that. So, so looking at it from an investment standpoint, and when you're investing in homes instead of living in the home that you're purchasing, and I get that, sometimes you guys might be doing a little bit of both. Why is it important for a home inspection as an investor? especially early on in your investment career when you're not really sure, what you're looking at, how serious an issue might be. Is it something that you can negotiate? Is this something that's, hey, look, this is like a, $50 fix that I can get my handyman to do? It helps you learn about homes. It can help you find what those deal breakers are ahead of time. We can tell you, hey, the HVAC is 20 years old and it's operating well, but in your budget within the next probably 5 years that you're going to have to replace it. Or maybe you find it in your budget that, all right, cool, the HVAC's old and it's working, so I don't need to worry about it now, but maybe we'll put a home warranty on it. So that way, if something happens with a renter, you've at least got some coverage on it. It's not going to draw, $10,000 out of your pocket, right? And the biggest thing that I think you guys can use home inspection companies for, whether it be an individual or whether it be a company like mine, is using us as a resource, right? So, the thing about inspectors is they love to showcase their knowledge. This is in general. We like being seen as the experts. We like being resources for people. So if you establish good relationships with that home inspector early, there's some investors that we work for that don't use us anymore. But if he were to call me and ask me questions about a property, like, I'd sit and talk to him for 30 minutes, right? So, it's all about relationships and building that up and knowing who you can depend on, so they can say, hey, look, I found this in a house and I don't really know what this is. Do you have any ideas? Can you help me out? It can be invaluable to you down the road. So again, kind of getting into, more experience, the less you depend on us. I really recommend the first, I don't know what a good number is, maybe 5 to 8 homes that you do, getting a full home inspection report to familiarize yourself with the house, with the process, learn what the consistent things are that you're going to see in a house, know how that's going to be approached in a deal, so you're not surprised by anything. Typical inspection is going to cost between $350 and $600, depending on size, age, and who you use. And then one of the things that we've done for investors, especially and I was telling Preston this earlier, we probably wouldn't offer this up to the general public. It'd probably be after having a conversation with you to get, making sure that you're getting what you need. But we also do verbal walkthroughs for investors. So $250, take us out to the property with you. You get an hour of our time, and we'll verbally go through, here's a crack, but it doesn't look like that big of a deal, or here's a crack and it is that big of a deal. Or we'll get into the crawl space and say, look, you probably got, $10,000, $15,000 worth of work here. Your margins may be a little bit too tight to jump on and flip this one, right? So those are some things that we can do to help those out. I'm sure there's some other inspectors in the area that will do something similar. Also, don't hesitate to ask for partial inspections out of people. The home inspection and how we're regulated and how we're licensed really is after the homeowner that is going to live in the home, right? The way that most home inspectors treat home inspection is you're going to know all the little stuff in the home as well as the big stuff, right? So the door's not latching, it's not locking properly, some windows are painted shut. Most of the time, you guys don't need to know that stuff, right? So ask for partial inspections. If you don't want the $500 inspection with the 50-page report that most guys are putting out, see if they'll crawl the crawl space for you, or just run the plumbing, or do 2 or 3 systems in the house, roof and foundation and HVAC or whatever you're concerned about. That's good filler for home inspectors. So if we're short on appointments that day, or maybe we're doing a condo early in the morning and we've got a 2-hour window that we can fill, that's perfect opportunity for us to be able to do kind of that smaller, quicker things, and it helps you guys out in the process. So again, if you guys have any questions, I don't mean to sit here and talk at you. So if anything pops up, anything you guys want to run through, don't hesitate to put that in the chat bar, and we can roll through it. Tyler's been anything popping up yet?
Nope, nothing yet, but I do have some questions for you if you don't mind.
Okay.
You had mentioned the HVACs, and I think I heard somewhere that you can look at the serial number and see kind of when that HVAC was manufactured. Is that true, and how do you do that?
Yeah, so so it is in the serial number. So if you look at the exterior unit, there's a data plate on it, usually right around where the refrigerant lines are running into the unit. It's like a little metal plate. It's got a model number and a serial number. And if you Google, we'll use Goodman as an example. If you Google Goodman HVAC age, it'll show you where in that serial number to look for that date.
Gotcha.
So some people make it way too complicated, and they've got the first year over here and the second number of the years like at the end of the number. I don't know why, but they just Train usually puts on like date of manufacture. Here's what it is.
That's too simple. Too simple.
It's too simple, right? Yeah, you don't need an HVAC guy for that stuff. Right. So, but the one thing that I will tell you is that only gives you the age of the exterior unit.
Okay.
So oftentimes either the exterior is updated sooner than the interior, or maybe like the air conditioning's been replaced, but the furnace hasn't been replaced. So there are data plates on the inside units too, but they're a lot harder to find.
Okay. And we've got some questions coming in. Let me address those real quick. Let's see. Justin says, at what stage in the investment process is it best to bring you in?
So I think that depends on the deal. Typically, we come in at the beginning of the due diligence process in a real estate transaction. So you go under contract, you've negotiated that due diligence period. I always suggest for us to come in those first like 3 to 5 days while you're under there. So that gives you more time to evaluate after you've seen what we have. Right. If it's a cash deal and you've got a 7-day window, get us in as soon as humanly possible. Call us and let us know you're about to make an offer on a cash deal and you need something quick. We can typically get that done. So ahead of time communication is the best, but I always say the earlier you can do it, the better. We've gone out with people in auctions to just kind of walk around the house, help do stuff like that. It may not be cost effective, but we've done some of that.
That's cool. David says, can you speak to the differences between a home inspection and a multifamily apartment community inspection?
Yeah, so one of the big differences is the multifamilies aren't regulated. So our license for a North Carolina home inspector covers 4 units and under. So if you're doing a quadplex or a triplex or a duplex, we can, that's covered under our license. Anything above that kind of turns into a commercial inspection. And really there for commercial, we do some multifamilies above for people, especially if they're, apartments or they're, big homes that have been turned into 6 or 7 units. We may start subbing some of that stuff out. Like you have some apartment complexes that have, boiler heat systems that run the entire complex. That's beyond our expertise. We're going to bring somebody in that's got that experience. But the biggest thing with multifamily and commercial that you guys need to be aware of is there's 2 different types of inspections. There's the home inspector doing a commercial inspection, just like they would a home inspection. And then there's what's called a PCA or a property condition assessment, which is somebody who's been trained and has, it's going to be much more of a formal process on using, I don't know if you guys are familiar with ASTM, but they're kind of like a nationwide standards for a lot of environmental stuff for commercial inspections, but they'll use more of those standards to give you a different process on that. So, the other thing about multifamily beyond 4, because we're not regulated. It's not regulated by anybody, by the way, so you don't have to have a license to do that. Is it's typically negotiated between the client and the inspector on what you need us to cover. So like we did a 6-unit one a couple weeks ago, and they didn't need HVAC, they didn't need electrics, they were going to replace the roof, so the cost is a lot cheaper. We just negotiated, interior and foundation, and that was it. So and you may see some that are, if you had more concerns about the HVAC, we've got technicians that we can reach out to come and do a further in-depth inspection. So we kind of act as a general contractor in those situations that, if you've got a flat rubber roof that, we don't typically see on a house, we're going to hire a roofer to go look at those kind of things.
Gotcha.
Does that help?
Yeah, I think that helps. Dave, does that answer your question? Good deal. Justin also asked, outside of issues that you may see when you're doing an inspection, do you all provide services or contacts for any issues that you see on your report? So kind of like what you were just mentioning, you may have like a specialist that or do you give referrals, kind of stuff like that?
We can if we're asked about it.
Okay.
We don't. So our state board code of ethics is we're not allowed to solicit repairs off of inspections. So we kind of keep that at arm's length on, we don't say, hey, your HVAC has an issue. And by the way, we know a good HVAC guy, right? So you asked us that question. We've got lots of guys in our pocket that we're happy to refer and introduce you to people that know what they're doing.
Right. Or you could just send them to the BBB, right, Mary? David also asked, just like a rough ballpark, how much would it be to, let's say, inspect a 16-unit community?
16 units. Again, that kind of depends on what all's there.
Probably you factor time. Are there any materials that you use?
Yeah, there wouldn't be any materials unless you're getting into radon testing or something like that. But even then, we've got equipment that handles a lot of that. It'd just be tying up a bunch. Let's see, probably be, I'd say ballpark between like 5,000 and 6,000.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for that. And Jeff says, ask Drew for his contact info. So yeah, so after we're done, if you don't mind just putting your contact info in the chat box.
Yep, absolutely.
Or you can say it and I can type it in there afterwards.
Yeah, sure. So our website is hometeam.com/triad.
Okay.
And probably the best number for us is 336-645-5112.
Okay.
And that's our office number. But if you guys want to speak with me specifically, just let them know and they'll send me a message and I'll reach out.
Okay.
I don't answer my phone a whole lot, so get busy during the day. Cool. So yeah, kind of back. Is there any more questions? Is that?
No, I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. So, a couple other things that we do or that you can get from home inspectors. One of the things that I think, especially if you're looking at buying to rent, is looking at maintenance inspections. So this is one where we talk about, it is a little bit more of an investment. You're probably really not talking much. If you catch us during if you wanted to schedule maintenance inspections with us and do them in November and December, we'll do them for like $300, because that's our downtime. So we can, again, use that as schedule filler and schedule it at times that make it appropriate to give you guys that kind of pricing. But some of the things that we hear from homeowners or see from property managers over the course of time is They take care of the cosmetic things, they take care of the visual things, but they may not be sending their maintenance guy into the crawl space. They may not be sending them into the basement. They may not be checking around common water entry points around the house, getting on the roof, those kind of things. You're typically addressing them as renters have made complaints, have made comments, or during move outs when things are pretty obvious to the eye, right? So I'd say about every 2 to 3 years is probably a good time to do those property maintenance. If you're really concerned about it, every year, it's kind of makes sense. But one of the things we hear from homeowners consistently is we find a big issue in a house that they had no idea what's going on. So from a investment standpoint, prevent the loss of value, right? Like if you want to do what Shailene's doing and dump 2 to 3 condos, and they're all sitting on crawl spaces, but you had no idea that toilet's been leaking for 3 years, you now have a several $1,000 issue as opposed to $175 issue to reset the toilet if you had found out 2 or 3 years prior, right? We've seen houses where drain lines are disconnected and nobody knows, and causing some really big issues that if they had found out about it early on, could have been a couple hundred versus a couple thousand, right? So, protecting the value, healthy home for a renter, that's one way to get better tenants, right? Good tenants want to live in good homes. If they end up buying their own home and moving out, they're still going to tell your friends, hey, Tyler was a great landlord, and I know he's got a handful of properties and he really takes care of it, and he's constantly upkeeping it and improving it, and those kind of things too. And like I said, you can't break even at this, but looking over the long haul, a couple $100 here and there to maintain the value is pretty important, I think. The other thing that I'll tell people too, and obviously nothing is ever 100%, right? Home inspectors make bad contractors, and contractors don't necessarily make good home inspectors, right? So they're two completely different jobs, two completely different skill sets, even though we have a lot of the same knowledge, right? We work with general contractors all the time on helping them out with their flips, just like we lean on them to help us when we're like, hey, we see this issue all the time, we got no idea how to fix it, right? So if you're depending solely on a contractor, there are some contractors out there that are really good at finding and identifying the issue. Where I've seen most good contractors is either making things look really good, or they're good at fixing the issue once you've pointed it out to them, like digging further behind it and really fixing the issue. It's not a slight on contractors by any stretch. I've got a lot of really good friends who are contractors, and we work hand in hand to make sure that happens. So gives you a different set of eyes with a different set of expertise. We just know where to look and where the common issues are. So the other thing that I'll say while we're on flips, and other ways that you can use inspections is getting pre-listing inspections done. So if you've had a renter in there for a long time, getting a pre-listing inspection before you sell it can help shorten the deal and show that you've taken care of the house or taken care of the major issues. A little bit more transparency. You negotiate a lot less. In terms of you aren't negotiating twice, right? You can negotiate the price at the beginning, but if you've got the pre-listing done and you've made the necessary repairs, you don't have to negotiate repairs at that point. Oftentimes the buyer's going to go, especially if it's an agent that typically deals with us, they're going to go, hey, well, Home Team did the pre-listing inspection. We don't really need to get them out again to do a secondary inspection because they've already seen it. You've got the documentation in hand that you can help show them, hey, here's who took care of it and here's what we did. Other thing that I'll tell you from a flip standpoint is home inspectors kind of have the reputation, or flippers have a reputation with home inspectors on putting lipstick on a pig. And that can help eliminate that. I mean, we didn't do any more inspections after this happened, but we had a flipper one time get us for a pre-listing inspection. The crawl space was shot. Damage everywhere. There was water everywhere. Got the pre-listing inspection done. Don't think he ever disclosed any of it. We ended up getting the buyer's inspection as well. We sent a different inspector out there. It's not conflict. And the deal ended up falling apart because they didn't fix those issues, and we're not gonna lie about them or try to cover them up, right? So, inspectors, when they hear flip, they're on the hunt to find where you guys are cutting corners. You shouldn't be cutting corners on safety and structure. We all know that, like, you gotta do things to make the margins work, right? So I'm not saying that there aren't cheap alternatives or cheaper alternatives to do things the right way, but that's just something that there are a lot of inspectors out there that are going to try to find out where those issues are. So getting a pre-listing can help show you, especially if you're not a contractor, that can help show you, like, did something like that happen that we want to know about, to make sure that whoever's buying from us, and we save reputation, and we don't have that reputation of being a flipper that cuts corners or doesn't get everything done that should be done, right? No house is perfect. It's never going to be. There's always going to be issues. But there are some flippers that I can tell you that we see on a regular basis that do not have a good reputation in our eyes because of that.
I had a question come in. How do you recognize a reputable inspector, a credible inspector?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I'd say interviewing them and looking at sample reports is probably a good way to do it. We all have to be licensed by the state, so extra certifications and stuff like that don't really mean anything in my eyes. To me, it's a waste of money. We don't have extra certifications for our guys. We're licensed by the state. That's good enough. Those certifications aren't going to teach us anything. Anything that's worth spending the money on, right? So experience is a good thing, but when you're talking about experience, it's not necessarily number of years, it's how many inspections. So really, to me, if you want somebody experienced, they need to have done at least 250, probably more like 500 inspections to say, like, they've seen enough to know what's going on. Kind of where we look at it, like 150 is about what my guys need to see before we turn them loose. And then 250 is kind of where we see them all kind of get a hang of it. And then 500 is where they don't have to think about it.
Gotcha. And are there specific questions? So you'd probably ask, can I see an example of a report that you've done recently?
Yep.
Or, how many properties have you inspected? Stuff like that.
How many do you do annually? The guys that are saying, I have 30 years experience. Well, my company might triple that volume.
Right.
If you've been doing 50 inspections a year for 30 years, it's 1,500 inspections, and we do that in a year, right? Like, so right. It's not a length of time, but air and emission insurance is important. Inspectors are not required to carry air and emission insurance. I think that's important to know. So making sure that whoever you have is one license, but they are properly insured, that helps protect you. That helps protect, something else that happens down the road. Any multi-inspector firms and national companies, ones that carry a national franchise, they're all going to be required to carry them. But I think half of the inspectors out there, little mom and pop, one-man operations, typically don't.
Gotcha. We were talking about, once you guys find something, telling that to your customer. What, you may be the wrong person to ask, but what is a material fact? I've heard that being thrown around. Do you know what that is? Like when you're selling a property?
I don't. Shailene might be a good one to answer that because I know she's got real estate experience. I don't know what the line is on that.
Yeah,
I typically look at, I mean, technically the way that I understand it is if you know about it, you should disclose it,
right,
right? And that's one of the feedbacks that we get on pre-listings is agents don't want to do it because they don't want to disclose it.
right.
Um, I think this day and age, transparency is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't try to hide stuff. But I think you can also, if you don't want to disclose something in the inspection report, you can just hit no representation and move on.
Gotcha. And thank you, Mary, for putting a list of licensed, vetted, and verified, trusted inspectors on there. I don't see any further questions.
Cool. I'd say one last thing to leave you guys with. Just kind of hitting on relationships. If you don't feel like you need a full home inspection, don't. I guess really just more lines of don't cut corners on partnerships, right? Pay your real estate agents well. Make sure they're getting their full commission. Pay your subcontractors the way they need to be paid. Don't try to nickel and dime and get it down because over time you build up the volume to be able to negotiate some of those deals. But you're going to need those people in your pocket when the time comes, right? So
Right.
you treat your HVAC guy well and you need him to go look at something really quickly without charging you $150 service fee, you can do that. We do the same thing. We've got a roofer, good personal karma too. I like that. But we've got a roofer that does the same thing. Like he'll do free inspections for us because we send a ton of referrals to him and we don't try to negotiate, fees on the backside of that. We're not trying to take advantage of them. It's customer service on our side. He gets business on the backside. But keeping those relationships good, paying people what they need to be paid. We work mostly with real estate agents and I tell agents this all the time. You treat us well 100% of the time. That one time that you need something to happen, we're going to jump on it. By the way, there are some high volume agents that we will not bend over backwards for because there are some agents that only do 10 transactions a year with us that treat us well, always make sure we get full price, never ask about anything. So when they do ask, we jump on it, where the one that's giving us 50, when they're constantly trying to work us down on deals or do things that we don't typically do, we have a harder time doing stuff like that. So
Right.
treat people well, pay people well. Again, business, you need to make money. Build that into
And
your margins.
it's like Shailene and I put in the chat box earlier. A lot of times that the cost of the inspection is going to pay for itself just in the negotiating power and you being informed about stuff that's going to come up later on in the project that you can budget for or let the deal go if you don't want it.
Yep.
All right. Looks like we got a couple more minutes here. Do you guys have any other final questions for Drew? Well, we're waiting on those to come in. Thank you so much for doing this, Drew. We really appreciate you spending the hour with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's such a pinch too.
Like I said, it worked out time wise. I had a cancellation right before Preston called, so it worked out. I was really looking forward to a long lunch though. So just kidding. But seriously, if you guys have any more questions, feel free to call our office and have them reach out to me. I'm happy to talk with anybody about situations and just be a resource to you guys, even if you never use me for an inspection, right? So we're here to serve everybody we can in the process.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. I've got your name, your office phone number, and the business and website in the chat box. So if you guys want to save the chat, what you can do is you can look on your screen and you pull the chat box up, and at the bottom right section, there'll be a little button that has 3 dots on it. And you can click on that button and click the next little window that pops up. The top option is Save Chat. So you can save that to your computers if you're looking for more contact information, or if you've seen something on there that you want to investigate a little bit more. Drew just put his email address on there, so thank you for that. But I think that's pretty much it. Unless anybody has any last minute questions, speak now or forever hold your peace.
It looked like Frank Earhartig had his hand up, or at least raised virtually. I don't know if that was an accident or if you had a question, Frank.
Oh, I might have missed you, Frank. Do you have a question?
Maybe
Might have been waving.
Just waving.
Yeah, he might have been waving. I don't know. Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you again, same time, same place next week, next Tuesdays. Thank you, Mary. Y'all have a good day. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew. Thanks, Tyler.
Yep.
Thanks, Drew.
Take care.
Bye.